How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another installment of YouTube Ask Me Anything. Um, you can thank your fellow subscriber J.K. Rowell for this series of videos. So, what I want to do is start going through these because I did a video with some newer questions because they were top of mind. They were literally right there, so I just figured I'd knock them out. But um, this series of these questions, well, I figure Ask Me Anything might be a parallel to Tech Support Thursday. So we'll start diving into this one. We'll start at the bottom here. Let's imagine the route switch EI track didn't exist. Which track would you specialize in instead? DC or SP or what? So I'm thinking back to when I got started with routing and switching. I probably would go security because that's always going to be a thing. And at least in my experience, the probably would do data center after that. Security has a lot of routing and switching built into it, VPNs and site-to-site connectivity and things like that. I probably would have done that, and then I would have gone the direction of data center. And because you need to secure your data center as well. And more often than not, you'll have to put firewalls on the edge, so it would make sense to do that. So I would probably go security, then data center, and go that way. That to me would make sense. May not make sense to all of you, but that's just how I would do it, and go from there. So, what do you love more and why? Routing or switching? Oh, routing for sure. Well, routing is way more fun than switching. Switching is pretty simple. VLANs, trunking, spanning tree, port channels. That's it. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to switching. Tell us a story about a Cisco bug that you had no idea was a bug and might have caused some problems for the customer. Bug. Trying to think back. Did I ever had to hit a bug? No. Maybe I have. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. I can remember the one that pops into my mind immediately when problem. This was a long time ago, probably 8 years ago. I had a customer that they had deployed DMVPN. At least the company I worked for at the time had rolled out DMVPN for the client, and when they rolled it out, they was it two pairs of hubs on the HQ location, and then Colo DR that was 10 miles away maybe. And then they had a point-to-point 10 gig wave, DWDM, dark fiber that they lit up for doing data center replication between their primary site and their backup data center and things like that. So I remember there being a problem. I can't remember which set of hub routers it was, but for whatever reason, if you logged into a particular branch office in the southeast, that they had DMVPN Phase 3 deployed, so you should be able to go site to site on demand to another site, and I forget where the other one was. And I started digging into the problem, and I was just like, So I could see the sessions. I tried. Not during the day, but after hours, I emailed the guy that ran my point of contact, who was the IT manager, and I said, "How about we, after hours, we try to manually clear the session?" And he's just like, "Okay, we can try doing that." And so we tried clearing on the hub, no joy. We tried clearing on the spoke, no joy. I SSH'd into the public address of the router, and I then bounced a tunnel on the spoke, trying to think maybe that would trigger, it would bring down the tunnel, and then we would bring the tunnel back up. That would reinitialize crypto, and Now, mind you, I have him on a WebEx when I'm doing all this, so he can see what I'm doing. And so he's just like, okay, I didn't do it. I go, well, I wonder if this is unique to just this location or if this is a DMVPN wide problem. So I logged into another router, and then I tried to initiate a phase 3 peering between those two spokes, and it wouldn't work. Then I jumped to another site, did the exact same thing. And the first two sites, I couldn't get anything to happen, and I couldn't get the third site to talk to the second site. So then I knew it was a hub problem. It was a DMVPN wide issue. So I couldn't get that to work. And I forget which hub was primary, because I'm trying to recall the configuration, because in DMVPN you can set the priority to a specific hub, and that'll be your primary hub, and you can have like a backup hub based off the priority. And so I looked at it, and they had 2 hub routers. So I was just like, well, I said, we've tried clearing the process, it's not working. I don't want to bounce the tunnel because that'll take down everybody, and I don't want to do that. So I was being selective on the spokes, but I'd only taken down one spoke. I'd only done one interface tunnel, whatever it was, shut, no shut. I had only done that on one spoke and brought it back online. So cryptography, the IPsec VPN between the spoke and the hub, because it's an always nailed up static VPN tunnel, that one worked just fine. But I couldn't get a on-demand phase 3 spoke to form between spokes, which they wanted to have. That was the whole point that they needed to do, and there was back and forth communication to be done if you needed to do that. And so anyway, so I said, let me open up a TAC case. So I did. I opened up a TAC case, and then I went through and did it was degraded. So I got a TAC engineer on the line a day or two later, maybe. We scheduled a call, and he logged into it. I gave him access to via WebEx. He looked at it, and he goes, we're going to have to reboot the box. I was like, okay. So I I told the customer what to do. I had him join the WebEx, and we went through and we rebooted the box. We rebooted one hub and then the other. We never had to go over to the DR site. So we rebooted one hub. We noticed all the connections flip over to the other one, go active. EIGRP over DMVPN. And after the one router came back online, we did the backup one. Was the backup one? I can't remember if we did the backup one first, and then we rebooted the primary, or we did the primary and then the backup. Anyway, we rebooted both hub routers after 15-20 minutes. And so once they both came back online and DMVPN was reestablished, then the spokes could form on-demand tunnels because the crypto process had gotten stuck. And it wouldn't allow the on-demand tunnel, NHRP wasn't triggering. So therefore, because we dug into the problem, and I'm 99% sure it was an NHRP issue where we couldn't get the redirect to trigger the way we needed to from the hub. And that was the problem we ran into. I won't say it was a bug necessarily, it was just like a hung process. Stuff like that happens. But I've had other situations where it's high CPU that was preventing LACP port channels from negotiating or dropping the port channel, and you had to go to a static port channel to do that type of stuff. But you troubleshoot problems as they come. So just a tip from my close contact with friends in the SP track: people only passed one exam variant out of 3 in the SP track last year, and only recently passed the second before the change. So please wait till more people pass the SP exam, because now it's unpassable. I mean, I've heard some rumblings about that, but I'm not really worried about it. Like I said, I'm preparing for two attempts. One is a recon exam, and then the recon attempt. And then once I go through that, that'll be, I will not be very, I'm going to go kind of like radio silence on how I'm going to try to pass the lab, because then it's me against a test, and that's when I go blinders go on and I'm like in the trenches. So now I know when Nick Russo passed SP, it was really challenging. I think he took 2 attempts to pass that as well. So, I know what I've taken SP before, so I'm familiar with the process. So it's gonna be one of those things where I just have to go see it for myself and see what it looks like. And then once I've passed it, then my goal is to try to provide as much information around trying to pass it as I can without giving away the keys to the kingdom to, like, okay, this is what I did to pass. So point you in the right direction. What was the most interesting topic for you in routing? For me, it was multi-protocol BGP, VRF, and VPN-V4 labels, followed by PBR. Most interesting topic in routing. I've only used PBR twice. Legitimately used PBR twice. One was for phones weren't registering via SIP. Yeah. And then the other one was for firewall rule to make traffic go a particular direction for something. But most interesting topic? Um, I don't. I'm trying to think back. I always struggle with redistribution. That was one thing that I always struggled with, and route tags and stuff like that. It just didn't always click with me. So I'm actually using. Is it this? Nope. I think it's this one. Oh. No. Okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to do this the hard way. There is a topology. I think it's this one. This topology, right? So I'm going to be doing OSPF here. I'm going to be doing IS here. I'm going to be doing RIP here, and then EIGRP here, or RIP, or something like that. But anyway, the goal would be then to leverage redistribution to get OSPF to talk to IS through a different protocol, so I can go back through redistribution just to make sure that I've got all my ducks in a row and things like that. So making sure I'm going through things thoroughly. Where'd it go? Oh, I must have moved. How far back did I? Actually, I don't think I was quite that far back. Well, maybe it was further back. Oh, wait, no. 1 second. All right, so what was the most interesting topic for you in data centers? For me, it was VXLAN, tunneling configuration, implementation. I struggled with VXLAN when I first started to learn it, but it was actually easy to understand because I already understood how NSXV worked, and NSXV used VXLAN. And then when I moved to NSXT, which uses Geneva encapsulation, it was very, very easy. It was just a matter of understanding how each platform implements VXLAN individually. But that was basically what it was. It was actually pretty straightforward. And I've done a lot of VXLAN. Probably 70 or 80 projects with it, and a lot of moving away from ACI. A lot of customers don't like it if they don't have a dedicated person or if they don't really understand it. So that's what I did a lot of. What was the most interesting topic for you in service provider? For me, it was implementing VRFs with MPLS VPNs, even though I didn't deep dive in SP yet. Interesting. So far, segment routing, and I've put some money and time into learning it, so I feel more comfortable with it. But it's one of those things where you just need time with it. And I think I've mentioned this before. I want to spend as much time in service provider as I need to in order to be as comfortable with all the different ways of implementing the technologies like I do for routing and switching. But I also have to understand that from a complexity perspective, routing and switching is down here. Service provider is up here in terms of complexity because you're adding multiple layers. So where you've got your IGP, you got your MPLS VPNs, and then traffic engineering and fast reroute, and then QoS and multicast VPNs and IPv6 VPNs, and inter-AS VPNs. So to me, routing and switching is a prerequisite for service provider. You can't do service provider and then do routing and switching. To me, it's like putting the cart before the horse. That's my opinion on it. But service provider is much more complicated to me than routing and switching was. Do you agree that Cisco adding SDA, SD-WAN, DNAC, and ICE is a joke, and does it make sense? It can't even be easily practiced or implemented. Yeah, I actually talked about this in my video yesterday about how would you study SDA, and the answer to that is unless you have DNA Center available to you and you have a beefy server that you can run it on, like I have, I don't even know how you would implement it. Hardware is expensive. I think Catalyst 9Ks are a couple $1,000 a pop, unless you get them, somewhere refurbished for cheap. I don't see how it's going to be feasible unless you go to some sort of like online platform like Cloud MyLab. I think has some stuff, but it's expensive to rent. So I don't understand the reason why that's part of the enterprise infrastructure exam. So unless Cisco has something going on with their CCIE enterprise infrastructure labs, because I know they just updated service provider to something relatively recently within the last couple of months. I did look at those for a little bit there, and they're not bad, but they definitely don't dive into the things that I would want to go learn. But in my opinion, these two questions right here kind of coincide with each other. But I do think it's a joke the way that Cisco's trying to do that with SD-WAN. Because if you decouple the software-defined infrastructure from enterprise infrastructure, you have CCIE routing and switching version 5. So the same lab I took. So to me, that's where you really need to focus your time and effort. If you have the means and the capability and you've got some Google foo skills, you can go find all that stuff on the internet. But until Cisco is able to get CML 2.7 with the Cat 9K fully baked, and you have the means and resources to deploy Cat 9Ks in a virtual environment to lab them out effectively, I don't know how you're going to do it. I really don't. An SDA, I just don't think it's a feasible, because then you're running two servers. You got one that you're running ESXi with, so you can deploy DNAC as a VM, and then you get another server that you deploy bare metal EVE-NG. At least that's how I would do it. I have heard of people going out and buying Cat 9Ks, the physical box, to do the work, and then they do some wireless with it. I mean, if you have the means and capability, awesome, but I just don't see how you're going to pull it off. I really don't. Unless you go to some sort of online resource like Cloud MyLab and you're paying, multiple hundreds of dollars for a very limited amount of access. What is the average salary of a pre-sales solutions architect in the U.S., and do you think it's not much compared to the effort and experience? I honestly have no idea. To me, to be a pre-sales SA, you have to have a deep technical background. I don't see how anybody can be a technical architect or a solutions architect on the pre-sales side if they don't have a fairly successful and technically complicated, or have ever implemented something technically complex or complicated in the real world. I don't see how you can be a solutions architect, because at the end of the day, you can be like a sales engineer. To me, a sales engineer and a solutions architect are two different things. And the company I work for, they are two separate entities, and the way that my boss explained it to me, which is the way that I interpreted it when I first started working there, is your sales engineer is going to know the platform, it's going to know licensing, is going to know scale, and the numbers behind that, and then how some things interconnect. That's what a sales engineer's job is to do. They're a product expert. They understand how the products work. They may not necessarily have the clickety-click know how to get it working, but they understand how it works. They know the platforms, the speeds, the feeds, the throughput, the connectivity, what's supported, what's not, that type of stuff. They're a product expert, but they know to not undersize a particular platform for a particular circuit size. They know to right size things. Don't put a square peg in a round hole. You can put the right size square peg into a square hole, but you can't put a square peg into a round hole because you're going to have 4 points of interference. Well, you can make that square small enough to where it will go into the circle, but then you're undersizing or you're not doing your job effectively. So that's what a sales engineer is. A solutions architect is going to understand the long-term strategy of what the customer is trying to do and understand that, yes, we can right-size this particular platform, but then you also have to take into consideration where they're at today, how are you going to get them from point A to point B, what are the methods of procedures, your MOPs, what configuration would you put through, how would you swing the cables, what adjustments to the routing protocols would you make? So you would understand both the high level and the low level design of how to do that. And to me, that's where solutions architect comes into play, because you're taking folks like myself that have a lot of deployment experience and putting them into a pre-sales position, and you're bringing all that technical know-how forward. So again, this is pre-sales, meaning you are talking to the customer before the deal has been signed and money has been exchanged. So it is your job, my job most of the time, to help the customer understand why whatever we're proposing as a solution is being proposed, because it's supposed to benefit them, right? It's about value proposition and long-term strategy and expectations, not necessarily trying to take a solution and find a problem. So, there's a lot of folks out there that are, I'll give you a perfect example of what I think was a created solution that has always been and always will be looking for a solution, and that is Lisp. I see no point in the protocol. Is it cool what it can do? Yes, it is cool what it can do. But in my opinion, it was a protocol that was developed without a problem in mind. Maybe there was, and I'm just not aware of it. But I don't have any knowledge of any Lisp deployments that are there might be one in the Northeast for some internet type stuff for a service provider who was using it, and that was a long time ago that I looked it up. And I've had discussions on Twitter about this several times where people were like, Lisp is a beautiful protocol. I'm like, not dogging the protocol. I'm not. Or the people that made it. I'm not trying to throw shade or bash anybody. But to me, why was the protocol made? What was the problem trying to be solved? That's my question. So to me, Cisco had some success with ACI and their software-defined software-defined whatever you want to call it in the data center. And so they basically did, in the data center, they took that concept and they built a team to do software-defined access in the campus. And so I was like, okay, interesting. So to me, they had a solution working, and somebody had a brainchild idea of let's do this in the campus. And that's kind of where SDA came from. And I remember back 2015, 2016 timeframe, I was describing how you could leverage VXLAN and BGP, because I was learning NSXV at the time. And I was like, well, it'd be cool if you could take VXLAN and BGP and do the same thing in the campus. My brain was already going there. And he goes, you can. He's like, and he described the thing with, instead of BGP, they're going to use Lisp. I'm like, why Lisp? And then if you understand how Lisp works, Lisp is very much like PIM sparse mode, where it's a pull model, where BGP is very much like PIM dense mode, where it's a push model. So BGP is going to give you all the information it's got. It's going to give it to you whether you want it or not, like PIM dense mode. So if you don't have any multicast receivers on your segment, you're still going to hear about it, but then that's why they have the prune timer that kicks in after 3 minutes. So to me, that's where that's why they used Lisp, is only give you what you need. So kind of like a fabric path kind of deal, where fabric path control plane was conversational. You would only get the information if you needed it. So kind of like DNS. So that's essentially where they went with it. So I'm like, okay. I mean, it makes sense, but to me, they maybe that was the goal the entire time. I don't know, but to me, I still don't understand the point of Lisp. I really don't. What problem was it trying to solve? If it was trying to solve that DNS-like operation where you would have a dedicated deployment, I even heard somebody refer to it as DMVPN phase 4. I'm like, okay. But it's just one of those things where you just have to understand what it is and go from there. But it's to me, it's got to make sense for something. It's got to make sense, and to me, it doesn't. How do you deal with the eagerness of diving into more topics to finish versus having to go boringly deep down the rabbit's hole to get the topic well? Well, that's one of those things where typically, the eagerness is, I can typically, how they put it, you can quench that thirst, I guess you could say, by simply just reading up on it and have just a general understanding of what it is. If you were to do like the CCNA and introduction to something, that can help with it. But like, which topology is it? Is it this one? Yeah, here. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So I have multiple topologies going for service provider intentionally. And the reason why I have them going at the same time is because I will get bored of, or I'll need to change it up. So I talked about this. I don't know if you're, for those of you that aren't members, this is the topology I showed quite a bit on my Friday coaching session, where the purpose of this topology is to deep dive into BGP and to take a look at all the different variations of both configuration scalability, confederations, non-confederations, route reflection, both out-of-band and in-band, multicast, IP routed multicast, things like that, and get into the weeds of single home versus dual home versus multi-homed, and all the different ways that you can do that type of stuff. So for me, it's more of I want to just be as thorough as I can. I'm going after the service provider exam. So the blueprint specifically calls out core IGP, OSPF, ISIS, BGP. So I want to be really, really well versed on BGP on both platforms, know how to configure everything, and that's why the book is being written, so that I can basically go through a lab, dump the outputs into the book, so whoever decides to go through service provider to the CCIE level will have a book that isn't technically geared to CCIE, or it technically is, but it doesn't have the technical deep dive. It doesn't have a lot of debugs and a lot of heavy theoretical breakdowns. That's what the videos are for. So that's why the topology is as big and as complicated as it is, because BGP is a complicated protocol. So it can be used to do a lot of that type of stuff. So that's the direction I have for that. So that's the eagerness. If I get tired, did it move again? It did. Every time I move the page, it does that. I don't know why. That's just weird. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Was it this far down? Yeah, it was right up here. Right here. So yeah, how do you deal with that? I just, if I get bored of one protocol, I dive into another one. Why did you buy the Eve Pro version when you could have just used Eve community version, especially with IOL? You can run huge topologies. The ability of adding links on demand, and that's pretty much the reason for that. I just, flexibility. I hear automation network engineers make a lot, even though I think it's boring to script with all Python. with Python, all that. What are your comments to this? Um, I just really hope they know how to fix it if it breaks. Because if you're just a Python person or Ansible or whatever automation they use today, um, if that's all they're doing, I hope when it does break, they're not, having to walk over or hit me up on chat or whatever and be like, "Hey Rob, can you help me fix this?" Because to me, if you shouldn't be automating anything you don't know really really well. So, um, this will probably be the last. I'll ask one or two more real quick. Can I use IPSLA to track the HSRP to automatically carry out a router role swap if there is a packet drop or latency on the primary router? I think you can, yes. You can track it with, you can use HSRP to call a tracking object, which can then be calling an IPSLA. So what it sounds like you're trying to do is do some pseudo SD-WAN, if there's latency on a particular link, you're able to fail the HSRP active over to be standby and flip the roles. Bastardizing SD-WAN essentially. You can do that. I don't think I've ever done that. I think the only thing I've ever done is track the next hop. Because in most cases that's all customers want. So if it'd be kind of a cool lab to try out, but most customers are going to be tracking the next hop IP. If it goes down, or they're tracking the link state. If the link state goes down, they'll fail over. Should the root bridge be the site's gateway? Absolutely. Wherever your root bridge is, that should also be your VLAN's gateway, and vice versa for if you're doing a backup root bridge and you're doing what do you call it, as your HSRP secondary. Yes, that is the case. That is the best practice. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it off at that one. I'll try to remember that this was the last question I answered, or this Ask Me Anything, and then I'll get this uploaded to you guys for here in a little while. Hopefully it'll be out before dinner time, the 6 o'clock hour, my time. So, like I said, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, drop them in the comment section below. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe. A link to the book, the workbook, the sample workbook, and if you want to join the Patreon community for $10 a month, if you want to come hang out with me Friday evenings at 7 o'clock for the coaching session, where we'll spin up probably a Teams call again, and I will provide that so you guys can talk to me directly via voice. I'm thinking about doing a Discord server as well, but I need to do a little more research. And don't forget that Wednesday night, I'm having Whiteboard Wednesday. I will post tomorrow evening, which will be Monday, or probably sometime Monday. And I'm the first topic was me talking about my lab, just to give you guys some ideas as to what it is that I do. So if you guys have any specific topics that you want to talk about when it comes to Whiteboard Wednesday, leave a comment in the comment section below. I'll post tomorrow for that. So yeah, I'll see everybody live Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time here in the U.S. It's about an hour I go for, and then Friday at 7 we do the coaching session, where if you're not a member of the channel or on Patreon, you won't see it. So if you're a member of, I have to go back and double check. If you're a member of both, if you're a member of the channel, whether it's through the channel or through Patreon, I want to get you in on the coaching sessions. So I still have some bugs to work out on that, but and that's for paid members. It's $10 a month. So, and you get access to me 4 Fridays every month, or 5 depending on the month. So with that being said, you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great week, and I'll catch all of you probably tomorrow when I do a few more comments, because I'm sure people will ask questions and things like that. So until next time, guys, take it easy.